Welcome to GlideChat, where we give you the rundown of all things ServiceNow. Let's talk about the now, right now.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of GlideChat. I'm here with Josh Herron, and we are going to be talking about asset management today. My background kind of is in asset management, sort of, and I work heavily with Josh here on the pre-sales team. So we've kind of had a lot of these discussions with customers throughout our entire careers, and especially over the last couple of years in the ServiceNow space. And so we wanted to touch on some of the more important or more obscure topics as we've seen them with different customers.
Yeah, I think we also have a few pretty broad topics too, not just the niche ones that we've seen. That's going to be important as we move forward too.
Yeah, I think one of the ones I kind of wanted to start with, and it's one of the subjects that we've had some questions coming up lately, is process definition related. So how does poor process definition contribute to asset sprawl or data inaccuracy?
So I think the biggest answer to that comes really from organizational structure that we've talked about a lot of times. Is where are the policies that the processes are driven off of, right? If they're not clearly defined policies, you're not going to get clearly defined processes, which is going to create miscommunication. It's going to create other errors that create this asset sprawl, right? So you don't know where everything's at because you never put in place in the beginning the importance of knowing where everything is at, right? And then not having the skill set to continuously track it. A lot of times we get lost in the fact that asset management is just this other kind of world of service delivery or finance, when itself is a practice that needs to be developed. And so if you don't have the right people in the right places, you're just going to continuously have issues across the board, whether it's asset sprawl, whether it's overspending, whether it's shadow IT, all these other catchphrases that happen within the asset management field. If you don't have it built, you're not going to keep up with it.
Yeah, and something that I've seen too is how heavily focused asset management is on the process side of it, and having somebody or a group of people that follow that process. Because most organizations just look at the technology and say, okay, hey, here's my silver bullet for asset management, and they don't bother actually establishing procedures and policies and documentation to track that.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I know we were planning on talking about the reliance on technology too much and going, well, we have this tool or we have that tool. For us within the ServiceNow ecosystem, of course, that is ServiceNow. But it doesn't really matter what tool you're using if you're not using it, A, correctly, B, to its fullest advantage. And I thought I had a C, but really it boils back into those other two places. The people are way more important than the technology. You can build as many AI bots as you want. There still has to be someone in today's world to manage that. And if you're training these tools incorrectly from the beginning, they're going to keep making mistakes over and over again because you never had it set up to begin with. You just plug and played, and it's playing, but with what?
Yeah, and how much have you seen that change over the last few years as we've been moving from a strictly in-office style workplace to this spread out working remote type of business structure?
So in our world, in the asset management world, when I started, it was about 2013 when I started in the asset management space. And you could start seeing problems, and you were seeing clear issues of the remote workforce starting, but not really. It was still kind of a niche thing to have a remote job or to work from home, things like that. COVID changed the world in so many different ways, especially in businesses. The only way we could survive in a lot of that downturn was remote work. And then we saw the productivity really take off in some areas, and we saw productivity kind of lessen in other areas. And so these concerns caused issues within organizations and where that technology was. Because now instead of, me being in office down the, around the corner in a cubicle, now I'm maybe at home, maybe in a Starbucks, maybe in a McDonald's parking lot, so we never know where the technology was then. Well, a lot of different things happened. Technology got better. We started geolocating things. And so we started seeing more. However, we still weren't managing the life cycle of the assets. So now you have this tech debt that's growing, or technical debt that's growing exponentially, because you're not having a constant refresh cycle, or you're having losses when you're not understanding where those losses are happening and how often it's happening. I had a client one time where we found out that a group of a division was losing laptops like every quarter, and they couldn't figure out because they were being just marked as lost, stolen. And there was no processes really in place to track, well, was it actually lost or was it stolen? If it was stolen, where's the police report? What's that? Because insurance can cover a lot of things in that case, so it's not just a pure loss. Whereas if it's being lost, well, why is somebody losing a computer so often? Or, why am I replacing it so randomly? We don't know because we weren't tracking it. They weren't keeping up with that. Or why are we blowing through so many laptops due to a repair cycle? Is it something wrong with that model? Did the manufacturer have a recall that we never knew about? So those kind of things or if you don't have the people that are specializing in asset management and can answer these questions or look for these answers, you're not going to be able to rein it in. And then if it's still everywhere, one division has their copy of their inventory, another division has theirs in, a spreadsheet or SharePoint drive or whatever. That's not a cohesive understanding of where your assets are.
And you deal with different customers, and this is something that we both have had conversations with different organizations lately that don't have like a central office. They have either different segregated offices. I mean, they're worldwide organizations, or even government agencies that have maybe a central office, but different agencies that still tie into it. Mm-hmm. And having different processes for the different departments or different technologies for the different departments that live in their own silos, it really puts a heavy impact on your asset management practice as well. Because as asset management grows, you really need to focus on it as kind of that enterprise solution, because you want to track that financial impact to the whole organization, not just to this individual department.
Yeah, we especially see that in companies that are that are growing very quickly, and they're acquiring smaller companies, or even they're being acquired by a bigger company. You start seeing that sprawl becoming way more apparent because they thought they had it under control until somebody else needs that information. Or another thing we've seen in our ecosystem here recently is this cybersecurity insurance stuff. Where these companies that are offering cybersecurity insurance, from attacks and things like that, now have asset management pieces of, you have to know where your assets are. You have to be able to clearly identify what is an asset, what is not an asset, how is that tracked, what is it, and so they're getting these audits back that they're freaking out about because their premiums are about to go up and they don't know what they don't know. The other issue that we see is education, especially in the higher level education. Well, no, actually, I think it happens even more so in like independent school districts and things like that, where you have, we'll take where I live, right? You have 20 high schools that all fall under one independent school district. And so each campus is doing something different or not doing anything at all. We had a use case at one of the high schools where they had something of like 20 pallets of Chromebooks that they had no idea where they were, who was using them, and it just blows my mind that you're not keeping track of something in that space. So we have to look at different opportunities to make a cohesive global process. There are some organizations out there where that works very well.
Mm-hmm.
They have, the parent company, which has a child company, for lack of a better term, which has another child company, but they're all independently governed. And in their spaces, they're doing amazing jobs at different areas. Maybe it's asset management, maybe it's something else. And so you can't really say, well, we're going to make this global policy and change everybody's processes because, well, they're doing it a very specific way and it's working and they're tracking it to, the minutia even. So everything is independent upon the needs of that organization. But you also have to challenge the questions that happens. Well, we do it this way because we just do it this way. Okay.
And as long as the outcome is still successful, it doesn't really matter what technology you have, what people you have running the different organizations or the different processes and product areas, as long as the outcome actually follows kind of your industry best practices around asset management. I did want to tie back to something that you mentioned earlier around like technical debt and education. Whenever we're getting into technical debt, I wanted to talk about something you mentioned before this call, actually, is skill debt.
Mm-hmm.
How are organizations really focusing in on training people versus trying to hire somebody who has that experience?
Well, there's two ways to look at that: the how and the are they. Because that's two very different mindsets. If you're saying, how are they training them? Well, at least there's opportunity to be trained, right? They have practices in place that allow maybe 1 hour a week to where the people of the organization have that time blocked off to go learn something new about their job or about something else. And it's set time for training, where however they use that training is on them. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's, they have a program that they can help track that training and things like that. The other is, are they? It's one thing to say, oh, well, we allow our people to cross-train, or we allow our people to go and find, training and things like that. It's another to have leadership, especially have the foresight to go, hey, we see this coming down the pipeline. We need to establish skill sets in this area, and we need to roll that into our current body of knowledge. Mm-hmm. So we do that here at GlideFast. I've seen, we have burn down charts. We have things like that where we go, hey, we see these things ticking up in the ecosystem. We have a few people that have the skill set, but we don't have enough if this really takes off. Or we don't have enough to meet the demand that we're seeing. So we need to get people skilled. So we start making that a priority, and we start providing those, the resources, the means to get this job done. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we do it better than we don't, just because of the nature of ebb and flow of work and opportunities.
Yeah, so we saw that come up whenever like the enterprise asset management tool came out. We saw interest in that and wanted to make sure that we had people trained both on the pre-sale side and on the delivery side from an asset management perspective that's focused on non-IT assets. Yeah. I did want to talk about something too. Speaking on like training people, something that I've seen in a lot of my customers is the burnout that comes with those specific roles. The roles in the asset management space that aren't really focused on, but then they're having to do both maybe service desk or maybe product owner, and then they have to do also asset management, and they have these new products that now they have to learn all the processes that go along with it. And so you're introducing extra burnout on somebody rather than trying to expand the team or allow them that space to actually learn what they need to do to be successful.
Absolutely. We see that way too often, especially in the asset management space, where we'll be in, like in our jobs, we'll be on a scoping call and we're asking those questions about, hey, what does your processes look like? Do you have a process owner that's going to own this? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes it's the platform owner, or it's the service desk, lead or something like that. And we try to educate and teach that, no, you can't just do that. Mm-hmm. This is a specialized skill set. This is a specialized practice. And there's even some areas in studies and in scholarly work that I've come across where there's an argument to be had that it is a specific area of an organization that needs to be built out, because asset management does fall between multiple worlds, too many worlds, actually. It's one of the few things that touches just about everything in an organization, from the financial side of the house under a CFO to of course, the CIO, for the informational technology pieces, to if you have a CTO, chief technical officer, then it falls into their world too. So who does asset management report to? Mm-hmm. Is there an argument to be had that maybe it needs its own, executive position, even if it's in just a, well, I report to everybody. So, I'm the executive vice president of asset management, and I report to the CIO, I report to the CFO, I report to all these things, because my world fits into everything else. Mm-hmm. And so my skill set has to take that into those worlds as well. I have to be able to speak financials. I have to know what the depreciation of these assets are going to be over time. I need to know how much money we're spending quarterly, annually, over the last 3 years, 5 years. When's my refresh? Mm-hmm. For these aspects, I need to know all of these pieces and how to talk to these worlds in terms of all the way down to, yes, there's a process for an analyst that when the incident team is, having to do a break fix, the asset analyst now has to be a part of that swap out.
Yeah.
Or at least have visibility to it,
Yeah, and you're not even introducing like the complexities that come with different industries as well.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Your manufacturing industry is going to handle those conversations and have their own vocabulary to deal with than, say, a healthcare industry.
Absolutely.
And whenever you're getting into the discussions around skill debt as well, I've actually seen that tie back to an over-reliance on technology. You don't have people or product that are people or processes that can do the job. And so then you're looking for this silver bullet to do it for you.
Yeah. And while the technology can fill a lot of gaps, mm-hmm. it can't fill all of the gaps. And there is no AI out there that can do that. You can't just use a machine or a piece of software to replace the human element at this point in the game. There's just not enough. It's just that simple. There's too many complexities that need to be addressed by a human, that needs to be touched, mm-hmm. physically touched, or needs to be understood in the moment of clarity. When these things have to happen, how does this affect the business in a real state type situation? So while the technology will help, it won't fix. And you can only fix that by putting in the right people in the right places and allowing that expertise to do their job. And if you don't have the expertise in your organization at the time, you either train it and build it from the inside, which is the way I will always promote and try to help organizations do that, or you bring it in, whether it's you bring it in through hiring or you bring it in through third-party resources like managed services and things like that, so that you can have that skill set there.
Yeah, we've seen and kind of an uptick in companies that provide that third-party kind of asset management managed service for a bunch of different customers of varying sizes.
Yeah, it becomes basically its own service desk, really, and you treat it as such. You have tiered approaches. You have owners, you have managers, you have analysts. You break it down to where you have a system in place and the people with the expertise to answer those questions and be able to look at the data and go, hey, we have 1,000 licenses that we're paying for, we'll say project. I like to pick on project a lot because it's one of those that I've seen so many people overspend on. And that's the case in this use case. They have 1,000 licenses and they're only using 60 of them. Right. So why am we spending all this money on 1,000 licenses for project when we're only using 60? Or the opposite end is true. I had a client in the past that when you got hired on, you got a project license.
Yeah.
Whether or not you used it in your job or not, you got a project license. And so they were overspending by a lot because it was a massive organization for usage that was sometimes zero over a year period. So you have to have these understandings of where that is. And in the hardware asset space, it's the same thing. You have an asset that you pod and then come to find out it's still on a pallet in the storeroom that you never distributed because you've been doing the right thing and recycling, technology as it's coming back and forth. And it's still in the box, hasn't even been imaged for a year, 2 years. So how do you deal with that spend?
Yeah, and then tossing in the enterprise assets as well that don't even have a tie back to your IT infrastructure. So you have to have those policies and procedures in place to be able to do your own internal audits.
Yep. And you have the opposite being true right now too. You have all of these things that were normally in a year ago or 5 years ago not visible to your infrastructure, now being visible because the Internet of Things are starting to combine all of these monitoring devices, all of these other capabilities, whether it's a GPS program for fleet management. You're starting to see all of this starting to now appear in your network with IP addresses. Now, how do you manage that? So it's being able to have the expertise in going, we need to do this. We need to do it right. Let's build it from the ground up. And building it from the ground up usually means from the top down.
Yeah,
having a leader in place.
Having that buy-in from leadership really does make establishing that department to focus on asset management so much easier. I mean, you start getting into having that governance side and having the process definitions and the procedures in place, being able to have the authority to implement those and hold people accountable. It makes it a lot easier to establish that and start reducing your unmanaged products, start reducing the shadow IT that is out there, and kind of establishing that enforcement, that visibility, and accountability across all of your different departments.
Yeah, and that's where it goes back to when we talk about asset management, oftentimes we forget one of the most critical assets of an organization, and that's the human asset, right? And talking about that leadership down, when you don't have that buy-in and people don't understand the actual impact that asset management will have across your whole organization, because it's not just budgeting for IT, right? You spend, let's say, I'm just going to throw out random numbers, $1 million a year on your asset management team, right? You have an executive level, you have directors, you have managers, you have process owners, and you have your analyst. So let's say it's $1 million a year. Well, if you look at it just from your expenditure on software and hardware, or maybe even enterprise, you may not see a value in just that, right? But what you're not understanding is it's also impacting your security, because now you have these people that are making it possible to be visible on where all of these IT assets are. You're looking at how it's impacting your transportation areas, right? You're looking at how it's impacting, well, your financials, of course, because you're looking at the dollar amounts. You're also looking at how often is it impacting your IT service desk, because you have the right assets in the right hands at the right time. So you're minimizing the spend of break fixes, or you're minimizing the impact on onboarding new hires, because your asset managers have come through and said, hey, we were talking to HR, and HR said we're going to increase our population by 30% next year at this current rate. Mm-hmm. We don't have the assets to support that. In order to do that, here's the growth rate that HR is recommending, and then say it's 10 people per month over the next year. We can start purchasing now in this fiscal year to do that and get ahead of it, so that when they come in January, we have their assets ready and we're ready to roll them out as part of next year's refresh cycle, right? So now you're keeping it in line, or you're doing it the opposite. Unfortunately, there's cutbacks. So how do we now reduce that spend, because we're not going to have as many employees next year, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. We always want growth. I'm always about business growth in terms of everything. I want to see people growing. I don't want to see people receding. Yeah. Because I've seen too often too that ebb and flow of a company, and they're doing great, so they hire. Now they're doing bad, so now they're going to start laying off, and the assets are impacted by this as well. And then now they're spiking back up. Well, now they're behind on debt, both technical debt and human debt, because just the ebb and flow in the natural process. But having the specialist in place going, hey, we were talking to HR. We know that we see this growth over a 5 or 10 year cycle. We know that we may be declining in the next couple of years just naturally. Usually it's because of maybe it's the human element of needing new change. So, we're seeing that we lose people around this time every 5 years or whatever, but we're okay with the assets. We don't have to go buy new assets. We can use these. It's not going to be impacted by our refresh cycles. So we can, we don't have to wait for the uptick that we know is going to come after that and start buying. So, but it takes specialists to understand that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we've had so many different conversations with people who really kind of seem out of their depth, because they've gotten handed this massive responsibility for asset management and they don't really know what to do. And I kind of want to tie this into our upcoming webinar as well, where we're going to be able to talk about this a lot more. And whenever we get into this, talking about asset sprawl, that's where a lot of our conversation is going to be, where we can cut some of that IT waste and regain that visibility into your overall infrastructure, both from a process and people perspective and from a technology perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good tie-in, because you're right. I think it's in August, I want to say. August.
Yep. So everybody, please feel free to join us August 21st for our webinar, From Sprawl to Savings, where we're going to be talking about asset sprawl and the IT savings that could come along with that. Mm-hmm. But I guess for now, thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining, and we look forward to seeing you all in August.
Do you have a topic in mind that you'd like to discuss? Reach out to us at glidefast.com and subscribe to our podcast for new episodes. Thanks for listening.